Welcome to the Green Podcast. My name is Dylan Welch. I'm the CEO of green.org and Dylan Welch Media. Our goal with this podcast is to bring you the biggest names and leaders in renewable energy, clean technology, and sustainability so that you can stay up to date with the latest trends and everything that is happening in this world. Not only that, you'll get some action items for your life so that you can apply some amazing things and make your world a better place as well. Let's get the show started. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Green Podcast. I'm your host, Dylan Welch. Today we have another awesome guest. With this show, my goal is just bring on really interesting, inspiring entrepreneurs who have some sort of driven passion for making the world a better place. And no person better exemplifies this than Kate Fosson, the founder of Brand Pollinators. Kate and I are both San Diegans, so we've crossed paths a few times. And I'm excited to unofficially announce, but this will be announced later, that Kate is speaking at our upcoming Green Summit, which I can't wait for. So Kate, thank you for being here. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
So real quick, for those of us or for our audience members who are not familiar, tell us a little bit about Brand Pollinators.
Yeah, of course. So Brand Pollinators, I started with a co-founder, and our original idea was to provide marketing support for emerging impact-driven brands. So we had both kind of worked in the consumer products industry and really wanted to help founders at that emerging stage kind of understand more about what their mission and vision were and how to communicate that to their teams and also to their customers as well. So that's kind of where we started. But of course, early stage entrepreneurs don't really have a lot of money. So we couldn't continue with the consulting on a consistent basis, but we really wanted to support these brands that we had been talking to. So we just started developing different resources that were more accessible for them. We send out a weekly email and we do a monthly community call. We just try to crowdsource as much information as we can to help those brands kind of get a leg up. And then more recently, we've been working on connecting founders to each other to do collaborations and kind of learn from each other.
Very cool. Well, I subscribe to the email. I love reading it every week. I suggest you listeners, watchers do the same thing. But I love that because that really aligns with our goal at green.org, which is basically just support other people who have a goal with a business, but also want to have some sort of positive impact on the planet. So I appreciate your work. I'm sure it's hard, as you mentioned, working with those kind of those startup companies because they're usually on a shoestring budget. So I like how you kind of, rather than being like, let's just work with bigger established companies, you kind of found a way to still help them. So I appreciate that work. I know it's not easy. So how did, tell us a little bit about your background. I mean, how did you kind of get into this space in the first place? Where does your passion come from and how did that lead to you starting your business?
Oh, yeah, sure. So when I first started, after I graduated college, I started working for a wholesale grocer. And it was this big corporate job. I was working in this bullpen of cubicles, and I did not last very long there. It just really wasn't a good fit for me. And part of my job, I was in procurement. And so I was ordering truckloads of toilet paper and truckloads of candy every week. And I just thought, man, what am I doing? I don't feel like I'm contributing in a positive way. I feel like I'm kind of contributing in a negative way to all these environmental impacts and, unhealthy foods and things that are just so wasteful. So I left that company and I just really wanted to focus on doing something that was meaningful to me and that I felt like I was making a difference with the work I was doing, not just as a consumer, but in my career. So I kind of started at the bottom. I worked in companies, kind of more entry level jobs, because I just really wanted to work for great companies. So I ended up working for PCC, which is a natural food company out in Seattle. I worked at the flagship REI store. And so I just really wanted to align with these companies that had a strong mission around environmental impact and building sustainably. So I got to learn kind of from the inside out how those companies worked. And I ended up meeting my husband when I was in Seattle, and he's in the Navy. So after that, we moved every 2 years. And I could not keep a single job throughout that time. We've now moved 8 times since we've been married. So I started my own business doing web design and development, and I was working with smaller companies that were just kind of trying to get online and get a web presence. And I started seeing a lot of patterns with these smaller companies where, they had big ideas and they had trouble kind of communicating them. And so I had a degree in communications, and I love design and communicating through design. So that was something that was really exciting for me because I could kind of merge those things together. And so over time, I ended up working with a digital company that I became the chief operating officer for. And I really loved the business side of it. So I went back and got my MBA and then just kind of pulled it all together. So I now work with impact brands that are in that emerging stage where they're, still growing. And been able to use my passion for making an impact, and my ability to communicate and connect with people, and of course the MBA, to help with the business strategy.
Yeah, that's amazing. I love how sort of at each step along the way you kind of learned and then like started piecing it all together, and it kept like growing, 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 finding yourself, finding your passion, also life things happening. So like being forced to move and kind of figuring out, okay, like this isn't sustainable in terms of having one job. How can I do that? So it's interesting, like when you're an entrepreneur, you're always like so focused on day-to-day things that when you kind of like zoom out a little bit and like see the course of how your career has grown, it's really interesting. So congrats on all that growth. I'm curious, like, because it's pretty, I don't want to say common, but in America, and I'm sure in a lot of other places, like you go to college, you get a corporate job. And a lot of entrepreneurs, they kind of like follow that role. They realize that that's not for them, and then they sort of venture out onto the next path. So I was curious if there was like any specific tipping point or incident where you were just like, this corporate job is just not for me. I'm going to go off in a different direction.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure if there was a specific point, but I just have always been, I guess, kind of independent and really driven to kind of make things right the way that I think that they could be best. And so that's kind of tough when you're in a big corporate environment because there's bureaucracy and there's different layers and levels of people that you need to talk to. And so I think that I could have done well there if I stayed, and I always do well no matter where I'm working. But I think for me, like, I have to have that purpose behind what I'm doing. And so yeah, I think just really wanting to build something on my own. I never actually really thought I would fully be an entrepreneur. I just I did freelance things, and I thought that was enough for me. I didn't want to have to manage a team and do all that. But as I've had more experience, I've just realized that it's just a really cool opportunity to be able to make an impact on the world in that way of saying, and that's why I support all these other brands that I work with too, is that, you can decide what your criteria is for hiring people and what your code of ethics is going to be as you're operating as a company. And all of those pieces, I think, as you grow, then have this ripple effect and can make such a bigger impact as your company gets bigger.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, that's a great answer. And the reason I ask is because I'm sure there's people listening and they might be in that first job out of college where they're like, this is exactly what I wanted. And then they get there and they're like, nope. And so I think it was cool how you kind of like reassessed and sort of went in a different direction. And like you kind of mentioned, oh, I like started at entry level, and that's not necessarily a bad thing at all. Like you're not going backwards in any way, you're shifting to a different area, and like you're just adding on to these different skills that you have. So I guess the point of what I'm trying to say is like if you're in that space and you feel that passion, that drive, don't be afraid to like leap out and make those changes, because it might seem scary in the moment, but then as we're kind of talking about, when you zoom back a little bit, it ultimately adds to more growth, and hopefully you can find your path as well. So my next question for you is, now's like the perfect time to start a business. I think like we're coming out of COVID, we're all online. It's so easy to like market a brand, not easy to market a brand, but you can start, a company using Instagram, social media, TikTok. So for those, listeners out there who maybe they're just starting a company, or they're thinking about starting a company, or they want to, but they're bootstrapping it, they don't have a huge budget. Like, what are some first tips that you could give to kind of help them find that brand identity?
Oh, yeah, that's a great question. So I think there's two things that are extremely important when you're talking about the identity of a brand, and that is the mission and vision that's behind it, the reason why you got into it, and the customers. And so I think if you're looking to build something, the whole goal of any business is to solve a problem for people. And so you need to understand right away who those people are and how you're solving their problem, and then meet them where they're at and learn how they're using your product, or whatever it is that you're putting out into the world. How are people using it? How do they like it? What do they not like about it? And really understand what kind of problem it's solving, and how it's working, because you can only make it so far with an idea that is your baby. And if other people are not on board 100% and they're not really loving it, then they're not going to spread word of mouth about the product. They're not going to keep returning to buy it and use it again. So I think really understanding how you can continue to provide value to those customers is really important. And then the first thing I mentioned, the mission and vision, I think is huge. And it even ties back to what I was talking about in kind of the meandering path of my career too, is that I looked ahead many years, decades into the future, thinking about what mattered to me and what I really ultimately wanted to do, and then just kind of pulled out pieces along the way that I could learn from and that I could use when I was going forward. And I think it's the same thing when you're building a business. You really need to be thinking about the long term, like where you want to go with it and how big of an impact you can really have with it. And keep that in mind all the time, everything you're doing. Learn from that, and continue to work towards that. Don't get distracted by shiny objects that may not necessarily align with what that end goal is.
I mean, it's so easy to get distracted by shiny objects these days. I find myself doing it all the time, but that is actually really good advice. And I sometimes forget about that. Like, I kind of mapped out like my 6 month, 1 year, 5 year, 10 year vision. But again, like going back to what we're talking about, is just like when you're in the day-to-day things, there's these little highs and lows, and like you just got to do, the admin work, and that takes away from like what you want to be doing sometimes. So that is really good advice, like having that long-term vision and just making sure like slowly but surely you're making those little steps every single day. Now I have like a question. You have like my brain spinning. Like I need to hire you. What are some good ways to like, what are your recommendations in terms of newer companies who don't have a massive budget to start like spreading their message? Like any tips or advice, kind of like how to get it out there? Is it social media? Is it in-person networking? Any other tips or advice you could share?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a huge fan of in person. I know it's been tricky for a few years, but really being able to get face to face with people, it's a lot easier for people to say random things that they mean or don't mean on social media. But I think when you're in person, you're more likely to get a more candid response from people, but also you can still kind of see what people aren't saying by their body language or their facial expressions or things like that. And so I think that that can really tell you a lot about how things are going by meeting in person. And then I'm a huge fan of collaboration. I mean, with Brand Pollinators, we've been hearing a lot about how brands really want to connect with other companies that are similarly mission focused, and how they can help leverage each other, the strengths each other has. So if you are connected with somebody who has a great email list, or you have somebody that has a podcast, or you have somebody that whatever it is, they have a lot of followers on a certain platform, then maybe you can swap support with them. Say, I'll write something for your newsletter if you do, some kind of promotion for me on LinkedIn or whatever it is. And I think if we can, try to help each other out where we have strengths, then we're much better off than trying to kind of start from scratch in all those different areas.
No, 100%. I mean, that's so true. We met at an in-person event, and I love them. Like, it's more real. It's real, genuine relationships. Like, it's much different than like sending a text or a message or a DM. You can have a conversation with someone at an event that will form a friendship that can last for life, or a business relationship that can lead to hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in potential clients and customers. So I think that's why we launched the Green Summit in the first place, was just because like I was kind of tired running this show from behind the scenes, behind a screen. I'm like, there's all these cool people doing so many exciting things. You kind of lose sort of like the appreciation of listening to a podcast or like reading, an Instagram post versus actually like going and seeing the energy and feeling it in person. So I'm all about it. Like, the more in-person events we can get going, the better. And then, yeah, same with the partnerships. That is really powerful. That's really good advice too, because we do like certain paid promotions, and I've just found when you can work with another brand, oftentimes you can complement each other in certain ways as well. For example, you said like, hey, if you feature me in my newsletter, I can share with, this here, and kind of get in front of those audiences, especially if your services or your products kind of complement each other, have a similar audience. So could you share maybe like a couple, again, I don't want to like take your thunder, like people reach out to Kate and hire her. She's a treasure trove of information, but like a couple maybe basic ideas of potential brand collaborations that people could walk away with and like reach out to someone and say, hey, why don't we do this or work on this together?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this one, I don't know if it's exactly, I would call it a collaboration, but I do want to mention it because it all started at the Green Summit last year. I met one of Arlinda Cornelis was the professor who was speaking, and I chatted with her and I followed up with her. I'm a big fan of LinkedIn, so I always follow up with people there. And so we stayed in touch. And this semester, she had students that were doing consulting work as practice for their sustainability marketing course. And so I said, oh, well, do you need, companies to do it? She said, yeah, have them fill out the application. So I sent a ton of companies from our community over to fill out the application, and several of them, I think there were 4, maybe 5 companies that ended up getting free consulting from her seniors in her marketing class. And it was just so cool to be able to see all of that come together, because it was like they really needed to have real life examples. They needed companies that they could, test out and use as guinea pigs. But then these companies also really needed a hand with some of their marketing support, and having, college age students to be able to get their input on how to promote their brands on social media and different sustainability issues that they could tackle with their company. I thought it was a really good match. So that was one example.
That's amazing. I didn't even know that happened. So there we go. Like, that makes me so happy that, yeah, little conversations like that can have such a ripple effect too. That makes me so happy. Out there now, there's college students getting experience and companies getting that Gen Z input. And I mean, even, yeah, from the Green Summit, I had 2 college students reach out to me. They said they really enjoyed it and they wanted to see if they could help out green.org. So I hired both of them, and now they do my marketing, and they're like exactly what you said, just like the younger generation. They're like, we have to be on TikTok. I'm like, you guys do whatever you got to do. You're the experts, but I trust you. So yeah, like those little things go super far. So that makes me really excited.
Yeah. And then, just for some of the brands in our community, we've offered some sort of a couple of years back, we did a lot of like Instagram giveaways where brands that had, like, for instance, we did women owned, and so all these different brands that were women owned came together to do a giveaway with their products. And we did some around World Food Day. We did like a vegan Christmas kind of gift thing. But then more recently, we've been looking at other ways that brands can collaborate, not just on marketing, but maybe on their like operations, or maybe on different things that they might be able to kind of split the cost on. So right now we're looking at producing a video that features several of the brands, and they are able to split the cost of that, but then all come together around a cause that's common for all of them. And so, yeah, I mean, they can do products, co-branded products together. They can do split the cost of ads. There's so many different ways they can swap, resources like we talked about, posting on someone else's newsletter. So there's a lot of different ways that brands can kind of leverage each other's strengths.
Yeah, that's super smart, honestly, because yeah, one video, let's say you have 5 people kind of working together on it. All 5 of those people will share it. You get that cross promotion and split the costs. Man, we need to talk after this. All right. I need some help with some stuff. Are there, so like, are there any, because social media and marketing, it always like ebbs and flows, like certain things work super well. And then like a month later, the algorithm will change and it doesn't. Like I noticed before, a lot of brands would do like giveaway contests and things. And we've tried that in the past, maybe like year, it kind of like has slowed down. We haven't gotten as much like traction. Do you think that's just from people getting oversaturated it? Like every post is like this, go follow them, blah, blah, blah. Like, are there any other, um, like any sort of success stories that you've seen when it comes to like collaborations or partnerships like that you could share as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think it really helps to get creative, like you said, to sort of stand out from the way things are being done over and over. It's like, okay, we're kind of bored with that. But I have sort of this love hate with social media, because there are so many people that use it that it's a great way to capture their attention. But on the same hand, there's just a lot of noise, and I think it's really important to think about that big long-term mission and vision that you have, because if your goal, I mean, your goal ultimately in life is not to see how many likes you can get, right? Your goal is to have enough sales that you can support the business and grow and get these products into people's hands, or be able to give back. And so I think it's easy. That's one of those shiny things it's easy to get distracted by, because social media is, designed that way. But yeah, I think getting creative, and I know one of the brands that we've worked with uses just kind of like an email capture in order to do the giveaway. And that's just so much more effective, because then they've got an in with the person who was interested in the giveaway, and they have a way to kind of follow up with them. Whereas if you're just sort of like this page and then we'll enter you, then you don't really have a good connection with the customer. So I think that's one way that that can really help leverage social media and also still kind of work towards what you're trying to do.
Yeah, and honestly, what you said is the most important thing. Like you can have a million follower Instagram page or 10 million followers on TikTok, but the number one thing for business is you have to drive revenue. So if you're not doing that, then sort of what's the point? I think that's kind of like that's a very easy thing to distract you, is just like, oh, we have to be active on social media. We have to be building our followers. And like you always have to kind of bring it back and be like, is this actually making my company business, or are we just kind of wasting time and energy and resources? And I think that's something that like I deal with a lot too. Like it's very easy, like how many likes did this get, blah blah blah, but at the end of the day it's like I always try to check, okay, how much revenue did this actually drive us? If it didn't work at all, let's switch it up and try something new. So we're going to have a few more episodes. I'm excited to really dive deeper. I love just everything that you're doing, how you've kind of found your path in terms of running a business and being purpose driven. I guess my last kind of question for you is like, what's one piece of advice that you could give to one, like that person, or maybe that advice that you could give to yourself when you were at that first corporate job, and you're kind of looking to take that leap of faith into the next direction? And then sort of the follow-up on that, like what's that call to action for that small business that might be struggling and just needs like a little push to go forward? So one piece of advice to your younger self in that corporate world, and then two, that little piece of advice for that small business that needs to keep growing?
Okay, so I would say for my former self, somebody that's, earlier on in their career, I think to to think big about where things can go and what you can accomplish, and try to be as specific as possible. I mean, it sounds kind of like what is it, manifesting, it's like this idea that you really, you need to be able to envision it in order for it to happen. And so I think that that's important, because if you are in a job that you're not really psyched about, or, me working these minimum wage jobs, like barely making ends meet, it's hard at the time, but to really connect to what's important to you as a person and know that you're in alignment with that, even if it's hard to see that it may end up, becoming something that is really profitable, or, really enjoyable in the long run. And then for like an early stage entrepreneur, let's see, I think it's it's so hard. It's really hard to be an entrepreneur, and just know that you're not alone. There are a lot of us out there, and we are all having a day. Everyone has a day where they get up and they're just like, what am I doing? Am I making a difference? Does this really, is this going to change things? And it happens to all of us. And entrepreneurship is really challenging, and it can be really lonely, but I love connecting with people, and helping them understand that that's how it goes. And if you want to be in it for the highs and the lows, then just remember there's other people there alongside of you.
That's really great advice. So thinking long term, kind of mapping out your vision of where you want to be, and then finding other people who have sort of that similar vision, similar journey, and supporting each other. It's beautiful advice. That's amazing. Kate, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing that story about the Green Summit. That literally just made my day, and like gave me that extra little boost to like keep going and keep working. To all of our listeners, again, Kate's going to be on the show a few more times, and we're just going to keep diving deeper and deeper. Kate's a plethora of knowledge. It's helping me getting, the creative juices flowing. And then if you're interested in connecting with Kate, she's on LinkedIn. I highly recommend registering for the newsletter, brandpollinators.com. You can find it there. But Kate, again, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it, and sharing some really great advice to our listeners and followers.
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for all you do. I mean, as you know, the Green Summit was really helpful for us. And it's just great meeting other people that are in the space and supporting each other. And so I really appreciate all you've done as well.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you, Kate. Thank you to all of our listeners, followers, subscribers. It means the world to us. Our goal is to just bring leaders like Kate, who are passionate about business, but also who are trying to have a positive impact on the world. When those two things can come together, I truly think that's where you can find a lot of happiness and purpose. So stay tuned every week, and then we'll have Kate back on shortly. Thanks again, and have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for tuning into the episode. My name is Dylan Welch. Appreciate it. As always, stay up to date with the latest information on green.org and dylanwelch.com. Dylan Welch Media is a full-service media and communications agency dedicated to promoting, marketing, and helping businesses in clean tech, renewable energy, and sustainability grow, get more clients, get more customers, get in front of their ideal clientele. If you have any more questions, feel free to reach out. If you're interested in joining the Green Summit, go to www.green-summit.org. Reserve your ticket today. There's very few spots left, so make sure you get on that ASAP. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.